Hi, my name is Sally Weber, and I'm the artist presenting the exhibition Elemental at Women in Their Work in Austin, Texas. This particular installation, Elemental, came out of a number of years of both research and some ideas that were very persistent and kept cropping up. And I kept thinking about them, and the more I thought about them, they gradually grew into the different parts of this work. I was interested in how the elements, the very elements that are formed in the stars, basically the result of supernova, and how they impact us, and how there might be a parallel in interactions between energetic particles and the very way we move and conceive, and the chance encounters that we have, and how that might impact what we do. This last year, I was reading a lot about alchemy because I was curious what indeed the early alchemists were really intending. The general lore is that they were all trying to make gold out of base metals. But in actuality, there's now some research going on between chemists, contemporary people in chemistry, and contemporary historians who are going back through the ancient manuscripts together and finding that the tradition goes all the way back to Alexandria in Egypt during the Hellenistic period. And in some cases, what the early alchemists did find was if you can color metal, you can make it look like gold. Well, it's a great way to counterfeit, and of course, the rulers at the time were not big on this. But what they eventually came to find is an investigation into many different substances and how those substances would transform, what they could find. These became the idea of elixirs and the idea of new perfumes, of new dye materials, and pharmaceuticals, medicines. So the more I read about it, the more I became interested in how people through the ages thought. They didn't know exactly how gold and silver came to be developed. So they thought that over time, and their idea of time was much shorter than it is in reality, the metals would mature in the ground. So in actuality, they were trying to help that process along, very much the way we try and help our processes along, to sort of hurry up the natural progression of things. And one of the things that they found was that they could transform some metals into others, and gold and silver became known as the royal metals. But for the alchemists, mercury and sulfur were the primary sort of moving agents, which aren't really what happens in the elemental chart, in the periodic chart of chemistry. What we find is that iron is the transformative metal. When in the supernova occurs, it's because iron has become the core of a major star, of a gigantic star. It has constructed the elements like hydrogen into hydrogen and helium, get compressed and form iron. But once it's formed in the core, it can't make any further metals, and it explodes. And it's the result of that explosion that create all the rest of the elements in the periodic table, and all the rest of the elements that create the rest of nature. For this installation, for the series called Passions, it's a 4-piece installation, and the iron composite of it is the sculpture on the floor that has a holographic image on the top of it. And the process of making that took me to Houston to work at a foundry. And that was an exceptional experience. And so I included a short video, not really as a document of that experience, but more as an experiential piece to show what it's like to see the motion of metal. And my early career, I was a jeweler. And so I worked with non-ferrous metals like silver and gold. And so to work on the scale of seeing the pores and, basically a ton of liquid metal in the ladle being poured into the casts of all the different sculptures was just wonderful. It was a wonderful experience, and that kind of magnificence and that kind of really basic elemental experience I wanted to include in the show so other people could just see a little bit of what that's about. The holography that I do includes several different types, but one of them is digital. And the hologram that is included as part of the iron sculpture called core was made this way. What I did was incorporate several different kinds of imagery. One was a pyramid, an inverted pyramid, which was created in the computer. And the other was a star field that was actually derived from the Sloan star map of the galaxies, all based on a viewpoint from our own galaxy. Those were combined in the computer and then transferred over to a digital holographic system, which took that 3D information and made it into the hologram that you see here. The one called Echo was derived from a real feather that was photographed multiple times in the round on a turntable, and that was put together with a video of water and made into a hologram digitally. And the one called Entangled was also made from a model of real objects photographed in the round and then transferred to a digital holographic system. The other hologram in the installations, called Trace Emotions, is made from real objects, but on an optical table with a different kind of emulsion. It's not a digital hologram, but actually sort of the most traditional kind of hologram where there's emulsion on a glass plate, and that's exposed to laser light through the plate. And so in this particular show, you can see 4 different variations on holography. Flux really came from an idea that energetic particles naturally just bounce off each other, and everything is created as a result of that happenstance. And somehow, to me, it became a metaphor for the way our chance meetings often occur. Sometimes they go wonderfully, and we suddenly meet a new friend, or sometimes we might meet someone and never see them again. We never know. And so Flux is tracing some of those patterns, and you'll see that in the installation. Behind me is a large photograph called Carbon Rose, and this came out of the idea of all life forms that we have carbon in them, and the center part actually is burnt paper, and it was included as actually sort of the midpoint of the flower-like arrangement to give the sense of both sides of what carbon is. Carbon also can become a diamond, but in this case, carbon is, for me, the sort of the symbol of the life force. All of these things are connected because we are that interconnection. And when we reflect that interconnection, it reflects better on us because we're realizing the connection between these things. And I think I hope visitors have the opportunity to experience something from a slightly different angle and come away having seen something they might not have ever seen before.